Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life. So my guest today is Debra Blackman, and she is an ace at streamlining your business to boost your productivity. However, Debra, through our talks together, has shown me that she is a maverick. She thinks differently, and she is definitely a disruptor. I invited her as a guest because we have a commonality running through our lives, and that is, as an abuse and trauma survivor, where life has really challenged her, she recognizes that unless we speak up, unless we share our stories, we are not going to, in any way or shape, change our world or those around us. And Debra is very much the kind of person who is on a mission to help you discover your voice. And I would mention here that she does that through podcast training. But her training is different to the normal in that she teaches you how to make your podcast profitable. So Debra, I'm excited to be speaking to you. Tell me a bit about you and your life.
Oh, well, thank you, Karen. And to all your listeners, thank you so much for having me on the show. It is an absolute privilege and an honor. Thank you. And a little bit about my life. Right. Okay. So I grew up to affluent parents, and now I've realized that they both had mental illness. And I do believe that they were both abuse and trauma children, that they'd experienced that in childhood as well. I'm the first person in my family to break this generational cycle, to which I feel incredibly privileged and blessed to be able to be the one that's done it. Growing up, I had an outward life of luxury. I had ponies and horses and went to schools which were very expensive and had a life in the countryside that people would, on the outside, envy. And you're right, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. And in pretty much all forms of abuse, I received it. And I thought that was normal and never said anything because it was the secret between my perpetrators and me. And to break that would mean that I would put myself in a very vulnerable position. It wasn't until the age of about 17, my father went to hit me, and I was wearing a riding hat, and a riding hat is a bit like a motorcycle helmet. It protects your head, and it's very, very, very hard. And he hadn't seen, because I was in the shadows of the stable, he hadn't seen it, and he hit his hand on it. And at that moment, when I could see his pain, he went from being a monster giant in my eyes to this tiny little disgusting, horrible figure. And I knew then one of two things. One, that he would never hurt me again in the way that he had done. The abuse still kind of kept up in my head. But also I knew I was going to be out of that house fairly quickly, because he would also recognize the fact that he didn't have the hold over me like he did. And therefore I was a loose cannon. So at the age of 17, I was kicked out for no real reason. The doors were double locked and I couldn't get back in. I had £5 in my purse, and these are the days without mobile phones. And I was a naive person. I was brought up in a very enclosed environment, and I didn't know the ways of the world. I then had 2 years of sofa surfing, so I was basically homeless. And I was still trying to get to school to finish my education, which I managed to do. But university was outside of my grasp because I needed to earn a living. That made me very resilient, and it made me withdraw from the world so that I could dig deep and actually get myself over that hurdle. All the coping mechanisms came into play. And as luck would have it, which is no difference to most people who've gone through these situations, I went through a series of traumatic relationships after that. I did have the fortune, and I will always say it was a wonderful experience. I got married at a very young age. I have to say it was for reasons for security rather than for love. But the gentleman concerned was kind and compassionate to me, for which I would be always grateful, because that could have been an absolute disaster. And that really did get me back on my feet. But he lived abroad, and we went for a few years, and I didn't want to stay there. And I came back. And all the while, I wanted to make peace with my parents. And I still tried to do that. But that was obviously something which wasn't actually going to happen. But that, unfortunately, was pretty much the case until their deaths, which was very sad. But there we go. That's, and like many, many others. And so I bobbed along. I was a high achiever, because often people in this situation are. We put that to try and please people, do well in school, career, always trying to strive to the next thing. I had to obviously earn my own money, which everybody does at some point, and put roof over my head. I was in international banking, and I was doing jobs which were highly pressurized, that I didn't really feel that I fitted in. But there was this almost this, I wanted to be hurt and abused by whatever I was doing. That made me feel in a safe space. And so at the age of 57, I had a nervous breakthrough. Everything came together. I had very many personalities, and that was to cope with all the different areas of my life. And in the end, it came to an abrupt end, because my body, my mind, and everything, and also, I believe, divine intervention, meant that I couldn't carry on like that anymore. When I had the nervous breakthrough, it made me go to counselling, which is something I said I'd never do, because it would make me have a nervous breakdown. So I had it anyway, and then went to counselling. Wish I'd done it sooner, but there we go. We can only work with the benefit of what we've got at the moment. The counsellor literally saved my life, because I was going to end it, because I couldn't see the point of carrying on. Everything was so bleak. And it was during that purpose, that whole initiation period into the new me, as it were, because the counsellor said, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, I want to know who I am, who the real me is, because I didn't know. I had a transformational experience. It was incredible. I felt that this peace came upon me. I felt that I belonged in the world. I did hear the voice of the universe, call it God, source, whatever you wish, but it was definitely a voice that says you're okay, you will always be cared for, and you have a purpose in life, which is something which I hadn't ever realized, because I thought I was useless, worthless, and everything that had been told about me. So it was at that stage that this voice, and I didn't have a voice, I'd kept quiet for most of my life and donned a persona that was very gregarious, very outward going, but this was not me. I'm a natural introvert, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I used to let people finish my sentences for me. I actually welcomed that, because it meant that I didn't have to speak. And the voice said, you need to spread your word to the world. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no, I can't do that. You must be flipping joking. And they weren't. And I thought, right, well, if I carry on like I was, I can expect the same results. You know, that's the whole thing with insanity, as Albert Einstein and I think a few others said before him, that if you do the same things, you're going to get the same results. So I thought, well, I want to change. I don't want to be this person that I am now. I want to find the intrinsic wonderfulness of me. And that set me on a journey to start up the podcasts. It was the biggest, scariest, awful, the things at the pit of my stomach. I can even feel it now. And as luck would have it, because when you're following your divine purpose, people, places, and circumstances come into your way to provide you with the elements of how to get these things going. And I always say ours isn't up to ask the reason how we're going to do things. It's to actually go and fulfill what our purpose is. I met a gentleman, he trained me in the basics of podcasting. And the first time I went on camera, and then I started to grow and develop my skills. And as you hear me now, I am completely comfortable speaking in front of camera, being recorded, and I've taken to it like a duck to water. It has been the best thing ever in my life. And the purpose of my podcast, because I have two, to be able to help people, to give them their voice so that they come on as my guests. Indeed, it's been a privilege to have you, Karen, on the show as well, to speak about their stories, to help people to understand that they're not on their own, that it's unfortunately more normal than we care to think that people have suffered adversity and trauma and challenge in their lives. And it's how then we use those as opportunities to grow and develop and blossom. And this is a purpose of mine, which now I ask actively for speaking engagements. I ask to present on various events, etc. This is the shy, retiring, I don't want to be seen, don't put me in front, put me behind, put me in a support role, Debra. I am now the leader of my own life. I am the captain of my own ship. I am the CEO of me and my world, which is fantastic. Working from this level, the world has just opened up to me like a flower. And I can honestly say that the people within that world, like yourself, Karen, like your listeners and my team and my other extended community, are wonderful, deep, blessed souls. And I am overjoyed and eternally grateful for the opportunity to be amongst the most amazing, incredible people that actually, when I was going through the majority of my life, I didn't even know existed because I wasn't resonating at that level. And now I am. I can only thank God for that nervous breakthrough, because that has been the transformational pivot point of my life.
And I can appreciate that, because with my own nervous breakdown, you call it breakthrough, I call it breakdown, because I literally had to break down everything that I'd built up before I could then start rebuilding. But one of the things that really stands out for me is the fact that you have been through all this adversity. You luckily found somebody who was willing and able to be compassionate and kind to you, to show you that love is worth connecting with. And in that, I assume that you started to love yourself more than perhaps you've ever even known you could do.
The interesting thing about self-love is that I always used to confuse that with being selfish and self-centered. And I was a chronic people pleaser, because often again, it's a classic symptom of people who have been through this trauma or they've experienced it, is that this is the way that we try and be everything to all people so that they will love us. And in the end, we get treated like a doormat because we have no boundaries or self-respect or self-love. Now, the wonderful thing is, with the self-love that I have, I discovered who I am. I am not Debra. I am not the person with the business. I am not the labels that I put on myself, the career woman, etc. I am, and this might sound a bit woohoo to people, and that's absolutely fine, I'm a light being that chose to be who I am in this incarnation. And my purpose is to assist people to find their voice, to be the very best miracle that they are, and know that this is what they are, so that they can transcend the constricts of how we perceive ourselves in terms of being perhaps a wife, a mother, a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, a career person, a good cook, whatever it is, that intrinsically we are all these most incredible beings, these miracles, brings us into this form. And it is our purpose to follow this universal pursuit of love, and be the love, and have the love, and be surrounded with love, and be lovable, and give that out to others. And it took me a long time, because I couldn't love the Debra Blackman that I had that label. And I've transcended that now, and I am the love of everything, and everything is loving to me. And so loving myself is loving the world, is loving the entity, loving everything. And that might sound like a different concept, but now I'm living this life. It is free, it's open, it's abundant, it's joyous. And that's not to say that troubles and tribulations don't come along, because of course they do. But now these are lessons. These are learning opportunities. These are development opportunities. These are things to be grateful for, because there is an old adage, no pain, no gain. And I think that's absolutely true, that we live in a world where if we can see something where we feel uncomfortable, that's great, because that's the position where we can change. If everything were going swimmingly all the time, we wouldn't be able to grow and develop as people. So yes, that was the start of the journey of to know who I am. And it's a miracle. I am a miracle. And we are all miracles. We are all miracles. And that's what this amazing world is trying to tell us, is that we are actually all miracles.
Couldn't agree more with you. I would ask you to tell us, what is the one thing that in your journey to transformation that really stood out for you?
The fact that I am loved. I am loved by God, the universe. I have a special power. I was born because God couldn't wait any longer to have me in the world. I was so wanted by the universe to live the life that I have done so that I can gain all of those experiences and put them to good use. And now this is why the great power of forgiveness, that I've been able to forgive my parents and forgive those people who had done wrong by me, because I know it was part of the journey. And I'm not saying that was easy. I'm not saying that glibly that, oh, I forgave, etc. But the more I realized how much that unforgivingness was imprisoning me, I realized that to be able to be free of that prison, that forgiveness genuinely from my heart, I wish them well. I wish their souls well. My parents have passed away now. I wish them love and happiness, because they must have been coming from a severely dysregulated, unhappy, poisonous place. And to live every day like that must have been torture. And so I'm not saying that people don't have horrendous experiences, often which are out of their control, and acts of God, as we call it. And this is horrendous. Yes, I know that. But even in those darkest moments, I've been homeless, I've been abused, I haven't had enough food to eat, I've done things which I'm not proud of to be able to survive. In the sense, it's happened, we treat it as such, we move on, and we use that as a learning experience. And even the hurt, when we sit with the hurt and the shame and the guilt and the blame and the awfulness of the situation, the loss, the grief, those feelings are just as important to have as the elation and the joy, etc., because we need to know one and have the other, so that we understand the whole, as opposed to only seeing the fluffy stuff and the bunny rabbits and the rainbows. We have to have light and shade to be the best version of ourselves that we can.
I think the one thing that I recognize in my own transformation was the fact that everything that we go through has a purpose. And even in times when it was like, is this ever going to stop? Is this ever going to change? There was always this sense of, even though I kept saying to myself, I wasn't worthy, I didn't deserve, I wasn't loved, there was still something within me that said, actually, you deserve something better than what you have. How did that appear to you?
Well, I started to look at YouTube, and I used to start to look at podcasts. And again, isn't it funny? I was listening to podcasts before I was doing them, not really understanding the whole nuance of that. And then it started off with me saying I wouldn't watch mainstream media anymore because I found that there was a lot of negativity and a lot of whipping up of negativity that what I was going through at the time, I sure didn't need any more negativity. So I stopped that and I started to think about listening to motivational podcasts, and I listened to Mel Robbins and Tony Robbins, and I listened to some others. And then I started to go more into the spiritual side of things because I felt, well, there has to be something to sustain this, because we can't just be happy when everything goes wrong. That's just a shallow emotion. We've got to think about where the foundation is. So I went more into the spiritual side of things, and I started to learn about how the planets align, how the world works, how we are surrounded by a universal energy. And once I came to the conclusion that we are all energy, and this is not woohoo, this is obviously physics, etc. Then I thought, well, I've got the power to be able to tap into the energy which is going to be the most fulfilling for me and for those around me. Because when we're filled and joyous and happy and everything from our core, we radiate it, and it affects others as well. It changes everything outside. So within, so without. So the perception of how I'm feeling now is manifested out in my reality as I perceive it in my outer world. And so for me, that whole process of going bit by bit, I now realize I have a choice. I've got a limited time of my recollection on this earth. I can choose to wallow in something and keep it around my neck and say, poor me, victim, or I can choose to say, I understand it for what it is, and now I'm going to think of this in terms of the learning opportunity, the positive element, not toxically positive, because bad things happen. And we should always recognize the emotions of sadness, anger. We shouldn't suppress them, because whatever we suppress builds up pressure and it explodes in different ways. But understand that and sit with it and say, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? And actually analyze myself. Analyze. And once that analytical purpose starts to percolate, what happens is, to me anyway, these emotions then start to dissolve. So the anger, the frustration, the fear, the shame, the guilt, whatever it may be, starts to dissolve because I'm going deeper into the superficial feeling. And that to me has been a huge help. And it's okay to go wrong because we're none of us perfect, and we're not meant to be perfect. We're meant to learn and develop and grow. So when I have gone wrong and I might have said something that I regret, or that I was a little bit too offhanded or what have you, I think, why? Why was I like that? What prompted me to do that? What prompted me to go a little few steps lower than what my benchmark now is for my lifestyle and my reality? And then once I realize it, then it's no, I don't beat myself up necessarily, but I think, right, now I've got a choice. The next time that something like this happens, I can take another route, which will be more beneficial. I don't judge as much as I used to. I'd like to say I don't judge at all, but I do, because just recently I was with a friend and I could just feel myself going, oh, right, you do it like that. And I could judge in it. And I'm like, why did I think like that? What does that mean that I can work on to not be judgmental in this regard? Because what circumstances, people, and things will come up to prove us to where we're not free. They will come into our path so that they can act as areas of where we can develop and grow. And with the 80 to 90,000 odd thoughts that we have every day, because I've now changed on a cellular level, when I was pre-nervous breakthrough and post-nervous breakthrough, I had a metamorphic experience. I went in as a caterpillar and I came out a butterfly. I know that change now. I look younger, I'm healthier, I have vitality, I see the world differently. I am different. And people remark on it that haven't seen me for a while. Gosh, have you been on holiday? Are you doing something to yourself? Because you look amazing, da 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 da. And that's all emanating from within. And I have changed on a cellular level. So now with that basis, giving people a voice, speaking from my truth, speaking from my voice, I now know I have something important to say, not from an egotistical perspective, but I have something that I can share to the world that is of value, and I am of value. And the circle of people that I am with and my community are of value. and we all have value and we're all adding to that. So it's a long, circuitous way of actually answering your question. I hope I haven't gone too far off piste, but it was just the stream of consciousness that came to me to think, actually, yeah, this is not, I am different. I have completely changed from within. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful transformation.
And I think that's what really stands out for people that have genuine transformations. You hear of people saying, oh, yes, I've changed this or I've changed that. But true transformation from the internal to the external comes through how you appear in the sense of your physical appearance, but also the energy that will exude from you, in that it's a calmness, there's a joy to it. I don't know about you, but I find myself laughing at stupid things, especially things that I do. It's like I had a piece of chocolate before we came on air, and it's like I went to wash my teeth because I could see the line of chocolate down my tongue. And I just stood and looked at myself and just laughed, because you have that sense of pure joy in life. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and each to the personality. I don't laugh so much, but what I do is I have this little dog, and she's just wonderful. And it's the first time ever in my whole life that I felt that I was mature enough to be able to look after something else. And I look at her and I just go, what did I just do, kiddo? And she looks at me and she goes, oh, like this. And it's that freedom, it's that childlike. And you've got this wonderful picture behind you, which I've remarked on before, of your inner child. Little Deborah is skipping around. She's not worried about the fact that to be little Deborah in her full extreme and wonderfulness is a joy to behold. It's not something to be shamed and worried about, that I might get told to shut up or whatever. I love to hear little Deborah because she speaks to me all the time. And I think that's that childlike quality in us all, this curious nature. And it's liberating, that joy and that wonderful youthfulness. And I think this is, if anybody's looking to redefine the age process and actually, sort of age younger as we get older, forget the creams and the potions, water and hydration and good diet and exercise. Yes, absolutely. But I tell you what, when you let the inner child absolutely out and flourish, it kind of comes about in your body. Do you know what I did before I came on the podcast? I jumped up and down and flew my arms around. I jumped up and down. I did star jumps for about 2 minutes. And I'm going, yeah, 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 yeah. That's little Deborah, because I've been a very expressive, sort of jumpy, abouty kid, always energetic. And you know why? It's because I just felt like doing it. And I know I work from home, so I'm not got the embarrassment, but hey, you know what? The older I get, I don't care.
Exactly.
It's just, I bounced about on the spot for a good couple of minutes. My heart was going, etc., and breathing increased, etc. And I got the oxygen to the blood, and I got warmer, and it was just brilliant. And I'm like, now I'm in the frame of mind to do the podcast. Before, I would never, you never caught me doing stuff like that, because I always felt I had to be serious, always had to be feeling that, I had to show this mature, whatever maturity is, stance to the world, etc. I would never have turned up dressed like a casual thing. I would have spent hours on my outward persona. And now, not that I don't want to look smart and give the audience, the fact that I've made an effort, but I'm not so hung up on that. I'm not so hung up on every hair in place, because it's just like, I just want to be me. That's what I can share with the world, the essence of who I am. And if that means that every now and again I don an evening dress and I doll myself up and I look, like, woo, sparkly and what have you, well, then so be it. But then there are other days when unashamedly I will walk around without my makeup and I will be in, my loose doggy walking clothes. I don't care. Why should I care? If you're going to judge me on what that is, well, hey, off you go. You're not my kind of tribe. And that's the other thing. It's opened my eyes to the most beautiful souls out there that sometimes I wouldn't necessarily have resonated with because they weren't booted and suited and corporate and striving for the next million. And I tell you what, there's nothing wrong in that either, but from a good place rather than let's kill everybody else to get there. So yeah, that's the liberation of going through this transformation. It's actually helped me. If you hear a little scratching in the background, my little doggy's just decided to jump in a sand pit. So she's having a hey moment. So I'm awfully sorry that it's happened on your podcast.
Well, it doesn't matter. I think the reality of life is that we get sounds, we get interrupted, and actually we have to cough, we have to sneeze, whatever. That is part of life. And the joy of living is that we can just accept. And on that basis, I would love you to tell us a bit about both your podcasts so they can go and find them.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So I started off the first one. Yes, the universe didn't tell me just to do one. It told me to do two. It's just like, oh, double whammy. Well, here we go. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say. So the first one is sphere of being. That's sphere as in globe. Some people hear it as fear. And it's not fear being frightened of being, it's a sphere. It does encompass a bit of fear, but it's about the good things as well of being. And that's all about caring for those that care for others. And that is realistically how we keep ourselves as we are caring for others. How do we keep ourselves on top of the game, our oxygen masks on first, making sure that we are the blessed beings that we know we are without thinking that we're nothing, and to care for ourselves is some kind of vanity project, which I know, and I'm not sexist at all, but a lot of ladies I know feel that it's everybody else and then they come somewhere, like 25th on the list, if they even figure on the list at all. And then the other one is sphere, again, globe of success, which is primarily aimed at business people, because when I was going through the nervous breakthrough, I was still carrying on with the business. Don't know how I managed it, but I did. And people would ask me, how are you? And I go, I'm fine. Oh, I was so far from fine. It was like a black comedy. I mean, it really was. You could have, oh, my word. And this is sphere of success. And it's to normalize the fact that failure is great because it's the foundation of getting where we want to be. Challenges and adversity, well, I wouldn't necessarily say bring it on, but kind of bring it on, because that's how we develop and learn. And I know that it's the crisis point that sometimes is that pivotal moment, like my nervous breakthrough, where I felt this can't actually get any worse. And I've learned not to say that because it usually does get worse. But anyway, it's embracing that for the learning opportunities and development opportunities that actually is there. And I know there's an old phrase which I used to think was completely glib: every cloud has a silver lining. Well, actually it does, but it doesn't necessarily just have a silver lining. It has a gold lining. It can be amazing. It can be all the colors of the rainbow lining, because these things come to us for reasons, as you said. And if we can look at that, and I'm still getting there. I've not got everything. I'm no way a guru at this, but looking at those challenges and actually catching myself in the act. And this is again helping people to say, oh, hang on a minute, I'm going down the old path again of anxiety, fear, worry, stress, projecting into the future all these disasters that may well never happen and often don't. And it's helping business people understand it's normal. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share. If somebody asks me if it's not going great, how's things going? I go, well, actually, it's going pants at the moment. It's being okay with the fact that how can we all be doing great? It's just by law of averages not right anyway, but it's okay. And how can we reframe that and look at the lens through different ways to actually see these as sometimes the standout opportunities that they are?
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Deborah. There's obviously two very good podcasts that you can listen to. So I appreciate your time today and for your willingness to be so open and sharing of your experiences, because I do know for a lot of people, especially somebody who has experienced abuse and trauma, quite often we don't want to talk about it. And that is a shame, because in speaking about it, we can educate others for them to understand that's okay. It's okay not to speak about it, but at the same time, it's beneficial because others can realize that you can get through abuse and trauma. Doesn't matter how long it takes you. I waited until I was 63 before I decided to have my breakdown. So, it doesn't matter how long it takes. It's the fact that we're willing to actually go through those breakdowns, to be able to get to that point where we can then improve and grow and expand both our lives in our spirituality and what we share with others. So thank you so much for your time today. We will be sharing all the details of your podcast and your connection links and all the rest of it. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated it.
Oh, Karen, as I say, it's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you so much. And as I say, if what I can say can touch somebody, the voice, if we can go out there with our collective voices and let people know that there is light and abundance out there and they're not on their own. And it might just resonate with somebody. I'm doing my job. So thank you so much. It's been lovely.
Thank you.